The shuttle landed on the frozen ground of Prime with a heavy thud, looked out of the small window and saw a world covered in white snow and tall black trees. The sky was gray and the wind was strong. She took a deep breath and picked up her bag. She was not supposed to be here. Nobody wanted her here. But the Galactic Council had made a deal with and that deal included one human observer at their training facility. The had said no for 3 years. They finally said yes, but only because they needed medicine that humans could provide. Stepped off the shuttle and felt the cold air hit her face. A guard was waiting for her. He was tall, almost 3 meters high, and his body was covered in thick gray fur. His eyes were yellow and sharp like a wolf. His name was, and he did not look happy. "You are the human," said. His voice was deep and cold. "Yes, my name is. I am here to observe the training program." Did not answer. He turned and started walking toward a large building made of stone and metal. Followed him, her boots crunching in the snow. They were known across the galaxy as one of the strongest species. They lived in packs and their loyalty to each other was absolute. Their young, called cubs, were trained from birth to be warriors. No outsider had ever been allowed near the cubs, ever. In culture, the cubs were sacred. They were the future of the pack, and protecting them was the highest duty. Knew all of this. She had studied them for 2 years before coming here. She knew their language, their customs, and their history, but knowing something and experiencing it were 2 different things. Led her through long hallways. Others watched her as she passed. Some of them growled softly. Others simply stared with cold eyes, kept her head down and followed without saying a word. They stopped in front of a large door, turned to look at her. "You will stay in this room. You will not leave without permission. You will not speak to the cubs. You will not touch them. You will not look at them directly. Do you understand?" Nodded. "I understand." "Good." Opened the door. The room inside was small and simple. There was a bed, a table, and a chair, nothing else. "Someone will bring you food. Do not wander." He left without another word. The door closed behind him with a heavy sound. Sat on the bed and looked around the room. The walls were gray stone. There was one small window that showed the snowy forest outside. She could hear the wind howling. She was alone, completely alone on a planet full of creatures who did not want her here. But was not afraid. She had faced worse things in her life. She had grown up in a small village on Earth in the mountains of Korea. Her family had been poor and life had been hard. She had learned early that sometimes you had to be patient. Sometimes you had to wait for the right moment. She unpacked her bag and placed her things on the table. There was a small notebook, some pens, and a photograph of her grandmother. Her grandmother had been the one who taught her to be calm. "The loudest person in the room is not the strongest," her grandmother used to say. "The strongest person is the one who can wait." Looked at the photograph and smiled. She was going to need all the patience she had. The next morning, a young female came to her room. Her fur was lighter than, almost silver, and her eyes were a soft blue. She seemed less hostile than the others. "I am Myra," she said. "I will take you to the training grounds. You will observe from a distance." Thanked her and followed her outside. The training grounds were a large open area surrounded by high walls. In the center, about 30 cubs were playing and fighting with each other. They were smaller than the adults, about the size of large dogs, and their fur was fluffy and soft. They made high-pitched sounds as they chased each other. Standing around the edges were the trainers. They were adult with serious faces. They watched the cubs carefully, sometimes calling out commands. The cubs would stop playing and form lines, then practice fighting moves together. Stood at the far corner of the training grounds, behind a low wall. She was not allowed to get any closer, but she could see everything clearly. The cubs were amazing. They were fast and strong, even at such a young age. They worked together like a team, moving in perfect formation. Their trainers were strict but fair. When a cub made a mistake, the trainer would correct them gently. But something caught attention. Some of the cubs seemed different from the others. They were smaller and slower. They often fell behind during the exercises. The trainers would push them harder, but it did not seem to help. One cub in particular stood out. He was the smallest of the group, with dark brown fur and big round eyes. He tried very hard to keep up with the others, but he always finished last. The other cubs sometimes pushed him or ignored him. Felt her heart ache for the little one. She wanted to help him, but she knew she could not. She was just an observer. She had no power here. The training continued for several hours. Watched and took notes in her notebook. She wrote about the exercises, the formations, and the behavior of the cubs. She also wrote about the small brown cub and how the others treated him. When the training ended, Myra came to take her back to her room. "What did you think?" Myra asked. Thought for a moment. "The cubs are very impressive, but I noticed that some of them struggle more than others." Myra's expression changed slightly. She looked uncomfortable. "Some cubs are born weaker," Myra said quietly. "It is the way of nature. The strong survive, the weak." She did not finish the sentence. Understood. In culture, weakness was not accepted. The weak cubs were probably seen as a burden. Maybe they were even removed from the pack. That night lay in her bed and thought about what she had seen. She thought about the small brown cub with the big eyes. She thought about her own childhood, when she had been the smallest and weakest in her village. People had said she would never amount to anything. But she had proved them wrong. Maybe she could prove the wrong too. Maybe she could show them that weakness was not always what it seemed. Maybe the smallest cub had something special inside him that nobody could see. She closed her eyes and made a silent promise to herself. She would find a way to help, even if nobody wanted her here, even if everyone expected her to fail. She would find a way. 3 weeks passed on Prime. Every day was the same for her. She would wake up early, eat her simple meal, and walk to the training grounds with Myra. She would stand behind the low wall and watch the cubs train. Then she would return to her room and write in her notebook. They continued to ignore her. Some still growled when she passed. Others pretended she did not exist. Checked on her every few days, asking cold questions and giving cold orders, but did not mind. She was used to being alone. What she was not used to was the feeling in her heart. Every day she watched the small brown cub struggle. His name was, she learned from listening to the trainers, was always last, was always falling, was always being pushed aside by the bigger cubs. But never gave up. Every morning he was the first one on the training grounds. Every evening he was the last one to leave. He practiced his moves over and over again, even when his little legs were shaking from tiredness. Admired him. He had the heart of a warrior, even if his body was small. One morning something different happened. The sky was darker than usual and the wind was colder. The trainers seemed tense. They spoke to each other in low voices, glancing at the cubs with worried eyes. Myra came to get as usual, but her face was serious. "There will be a special test today," Myra said. "The elder pack leaders are coming to watch. They will decide which cubs are ready to move to the next level of training." Felt a knot in her stomach. What happens to the cubs who are not ready? Myra was quiet for a long moment. "They are removed from the training program." "Removed? Where do they go?" "They go to the outer villages. They become workers, not warriors. They live simple lives away from the pack." Understood. Being removed was like being thrown away. In culture, warriors were everything. Being sent to the outer villages was a great shame. She thought about, the small cub would surely fail the test. He would be sent away from his pack, away from everything he knew. The training grounds were different that morning. Large chairs had been set up on one side for the elder pack leaders. They were old with gray fur and wise eyes. Their faces showed no emotion as they watched the cubs line up. Took her usual place behind the low wall, but today she moved a little closer. She wanted to see everything clearly. The test began. The cubs had to run through an obstacle course, then fight in pairs, then work together to solve a problem. The trainers watched carefully, marking notes on small tablets. Most of the cubs did well. They ran fast, fought hard, and worked together smoothly, but struggled from the start. He tripped on the first obstacle. He lost his fight in seconds. When it came time for the group problem, the other cubs pushed him to the back and ignored him. His heart broke as she watched. Tried so hard, but nothing worked. The elder pack leaders shook their heads and spoke quietly to each other. Then something strange happened. The trainers called for a short break. The cubs scattered around the training grounds, drinking water and resting. The elder pack leaders stood up and walked toward the main building, probably to discuss what they had seen. Was still standing behind the low wall, watching sit alone in the corner. The other cubs stayed away from him. He looked so small and sad. Without thinking, stepped over the low wall and walked onto the training grounds. She did not know why she did it. She knew it was against the rules. She knew would be furious, but something inside her could not stay behind that wall anymore. She walked slowly toward the center of the training grounds. Her heart was beating fast. She could feel the eyes of the trainers on her. She could hear them shouting, telling her to stop. But she did not stop. And then it happened. Looked up and saw her. His big round eyes met hers. For a moment, nothing moved. Then stood up and started running toward her. Not walking, running, as fast as his little legs could carry him. And he was not alone. One by one, the other cubs stopped what they were doing and turned to look at. One by one, they started running toward her too. The biggest cubs, the smallest cubs, the fast ones and the slow ones. All of them. Within seconds was surrounded by 30 cubs. They pressed against her legs, rubbed their heads on her hands, and made soft, happy sounds. Was right at her feet, looking up at her with eyes full of trust. The training grounds went completely silent. The trainers stood frozen in shock. Their mouths were open, but no words came out. This had never happened before. In all of history, no outsider had ever been approached by cubs. Cubs were taught from birth to fear strangers. They were taught that only pack members were safe. But here were 30 cubs, surrounding a human like she was one of them. Myra came running toward, her face pale with shock. "What did you do?" Myra whispered. "How did you do this?" Shook her head slowly. "I did not do anything, I just walked toward them." The elder pack leaders had heard the commotion and returned to the training grounds. When they saw what was happening, they stopped in their tracks. The oldest one, a massive with pure white fur, stared at with wide eyes. "Impossible," he said. "This is impossible." The cubs continued to press against. Some of them were making sounds that she had never heard before. It was almost like they were purring. Climbed up onto her boot and wrapped his small paws around her leg. He looked up at her with complete trust, as if she was the safest thing in the world. Pushed through the crowd of trainers. His face was twisted with anger and confusion. "Human, what have you done? What trick is this?" "I did nothing," said calmly. "I only walked toward them. They came to me on their own." "Lies, you must have used some human technology, some device to control their minds." The white-furred elder raised his paw. "Silence, let me see." The elder walked slowly toward. The cubs parted to let him through, but they did not leave her side. The elder stopped in front of her and looked deep into her eyes. "I sense no deception in you," the elder said. "I sense no fear. I sense no threat." "Because there is none," replied. "I mean no harm to anyone." The elder studied her for a long moment. Then he looked down at the cubs, still pressing against her legs. "Our cubs are trained to sense danger," the elder said. "They can feel threat from a great distance. They have never, in thousands of years, approached an outsider willingly." He looked back at, "What are you, human? What do you carry inside you that makes our cubs run to you like you are their mother?" Thought about the question. She thought about her grandmother, about her childhood, about all the years she had spent learning to be calm and patient. "I carry nothing special," she said, "only peace." The elder was quiet for a very long time. The wind howled around them. The snow began to fall. Finally, the elder spoke. "Take the human to the council chamber. We have much to discuss." As led her away, looked back at the cubs. They were watching her go with sad eyes, made a small crying sound. Smiled at them. "I will be back," she said softly. "I promise." She did not know if she could keep that promise, but she would try. The council chamber was deep inside the main building. It was a large round room with high ceilings and walls covered in old paintings. The paintings showed great warriors from history, their fierce eyes staring down at everyone below. Stood in the center of the room. Around her sat the elder pack leaders on tall chairs made of dark wood. There were 7 of them in total. The white-furred elder, whose name was, sat in the highest chair, stood by the door, watching with suspicious eyes. "We will now begin the investigation," elder said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Human, you will answer all questions honestly. Any lies will be punished." Nodded, "I will answer honestly." A female elder with golden fur leaned forward. Her name was, and her voice was sharp like a blade. "How did you make the cubs approach you? What method did you use?" "I used no method," said. "I simply walked toward them." "Impossible," snapped. "Our cubs are trained from birth to stay away from outsiders. They would never approach a stranger willingly." "And yet they did," replied calmly. "I cannot explain why, I only know what happened." Another elder, a large male with fur, stood up. His name was, and he was the head of warrior training. "We will scan her for devices," said. "Bring the scanner." A trainer brought a small machine and ran it over his body. The machine made soft beeping sounds as it worked. After a few minutes, the trainer shook his head. "No devices found. No technology of any kind." Sat back down, his face confused. "Perhaps it is a chemical," suggested. "Some human substance that attracts young creatures." "Test her blood," ordered. Did not resist as a healer came and took a small sample of her blood. The healer placed it in a machine and waited. The room was silent as everyone watched. Finally, the healer spoke. "The blood is normal. There are no unusual chemicals or substances. She is a regular human." The elders looked at each other. They had no explanation for what had happened. Stepped forward. "Perhaps she has been training in secret. Perhaps she has been sneaking to the training grounds at night and spending time with the cubs." "That is not true," Myra said. She had been standing quietly in the corner, but now she spoke up. "I have been watching her every day. She has never left her room at night. She has never broken any rules." "Then explain what happened," shouted. "Cubs do not run to strangers. It goes against everything in our nature." Elder raised his paw for silence. The room went quiet. "Human," said slowly, "when you walked onto the training grounds, what were you feeling?" Thought carefully before answering. "I was feeling sad," she said. "I was watching the small brown cub. He was sitting alone. The other cubs ignored him. I felt pain in my heart for him." "You felt pain for a cub?" asked, her voice full of disbelief. "Yes, he reminded me of myself when I was young. I was also small and weak. People ignored me too." The elders exchanged looks. This was strange talk to them. "Continue," said. "When I stepped over the wall, I was not thinking about rules or consequences. I was only thinking about, I wanted him to know that someone saw him, that someone cared." "And then the cubs ran to you," said. "Yes, all of them, not just." Was quiet for a long moment. He seemed to be thinking deeply. "Tell me, human, when you walked toward the cubs, were you afraid?" Shook her head. "No, I was not afraid." "Were you angry? Did you want to hurt anyone?" "No, I only wanted to comfort them." "And your heart, was it beating fast or slow?" Remembered that moment. She had felt completely calm, completely at peace. It was slow, she said, very slow. Nodded slowly, he turned to the other elders. Our cubs can sense emotions, he said. They feel what others feel. Fear, anger, hunger, danger. They can sense all of these things. We know this, said impatiently. What is your point? My point is this. What if they sense something in this human that they have never sensed before? What if they felt her peace, her calmness, her genuine care for them? That would mean she has no threat in her at all, said. No hidden motives, no secret plans. Exactly, said. The cubs ran to her because she was the safest being they had ever encountered. The room went silent again. The elders were struggling to understand. How is that possible? Asked. All creatures have some level of threat in them. It is natural. It is survival. Looked at, tell me about your people. Tell me about humans. Thought for a moment. Humans are complicated, she said. We can be cruel and violent. We have fought many wars. We have done terrible things to each other. Then how can you carry no threat? Demanded. Because threat is not just about what your species can do, explained. It is about what you choose to do. I choose peace. I have trained myself my whole life to be calm, to not react with anger or fear, to approach every situation with an open heart. Trained yourself, leaned forward with interest. How does one train themselves to be peaceful? Smiled softly. My grandmother taught me. She said that the loudest person in the room is not the strongest. The strongest is the one who can stay calm when everyone else is angry, the one who can wait when everyone else is rushing. Was quiet. The other elders were quiet too. Finally spoke. In our culture, strength is everything. We train our cubs to be strong, to be fast, to be fierce. We teach them to fight and to win. But perhaps we have forgotten something. What have we forgotten? Asked. That true strength is not just physical. True strength is also here, pointed to his chest where his heart was. The strength to be kind, the strength to be patient, the strength to care for others. Shook her head. This is strange talk. Are you saying we should change our ways because of one human? I am saying we should think about it, replied. Our cubs chose her. They ran to her without hesitation. That means something. Stepped forward again. What do we do with her now? She broke the rules. She entered the training grounds without permission. Looked at for a long time. His old eyes were filled with something new, curiosity perhaps, or respect. She will not be punished, said finally. She will be given access to the training grounds. We will watch what happens. You cannot be serious, shouted. She is an outsider. She was an outsider, corrected. The cubs have accepted her. That is something we cannot ignore. Stood up from his chair. The other elders stood too. Take her back to the training grounds, ordered. Let her be with the cubs. Let us see what else we can learn. As was led out of the council chamber, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had not been sent away. She had not been punished. Instead, she had been given a chance. And she would not waste it. The days that followed were unlike anything they had ever seen. Was allowed to enter the training grounds freely. She was allowed to be with the cubs, and the cubs loved her. Every morning when appeared at the training grounds, the cubs would run to greet her. They would press against her legs, rub their heads on her hands and make happy sounds. Was always the first to reach her, his small tail wagging with joy. The trainers watched with confusion and wonder. Some of them were angry. They had spent years learning how to work with cubs, and here was a human doing something they could not do. Others were curious. They wanted to understand how this was possible. Elder came to watch almost every day. He sat on a chair at the edge of the training grounds and observed everything with careful eyes. One afternoon, he called to sit with him. Tell me more about this thing you call gentle presence, said. How does it work? Thought about how to explain. It starts with the breath, she said. When I am with the cubs, I breathe slowly and deeply. This keeps my heart calm and my body relaxed. Just breathing seemed surprised. It is more than that. I also clear my mind of all thoughts. I do not think about the past or the future. I only focus on the present moment, on the cubs in front of me, on the snow on the ground, on the sound of the wind. And this makes you safe to them. Yes, when my mind is clear, I carry no fear, no anger, no desire. The cubs sense this. They feel that I have no hidden intentions. I am simply there, fully present, fully calm. Was quiet for a moment. Our trainers carry much stress, he said. They worry about the cubs' progress. They fear judgment from the elders. They feel pressure to produce strong warriors. And the cubs sense all of that, said. They feel the stress and the fear. It makes them tense. It makes them anxious. But with you, they feel none of that. Exactly. With me, they feel only peace. Looked out at the training grounds. The cubs were playing with each other, tumbling and chasing. But every few minutes, one of them would run to, touch her hand, and then run back to play. It was like they needed to check that she was still there. There is something else, said. Something my grandmother taught me. What is it? When I am with the cubs, I do not look down at them. I make myself small. I kneel so that my eyes are at their level. I let them come to me instead of reaching for them. Why does this matter? Because it shows respect. It shows that I do not think I am above them. I treat them as equals, not as lesser beings. Nodded slowly. This is very different from our ways. Our trainers stand tall. They give commands. They show dominance. And that works for training warriors, said. But it may not be the best way to build trust. For the next few weeks began to teach the trainers what she knew. It was not easy. Many of them were resistant to change. They thought her methods were soft and weak. But some of them listened. Myra was the first to try. She practiced breathing slowly and clearing her mind. She practiced kneeling down to meet the cubs at eye level, and slowly the cubs began to respond to her differently. They were less tense around her. They listened to her commands more willingly. Other trainers noticed the change and began to try too. Elder watched all of this with growing interest. He had been a warrior all his life. He had believed that strength was the most important thing, but now he was starting to see things differently. One evening, invited to have dinner with him. They sat in his private quarters, eating warm soup and bread. The fire crackled in the corner. I have been thinking, said, about strength and weakness. What have you been thinking? All my life, I believed that the strong survive and the weak fall behind. It is the way of nature. It is the way of our people. And now, sighed, now I am not so sure. I look at Little. He is the weakest cub in the training program. By our standards, he should have been sent away weeks ago. But he is still here, said. Yes, because of you, because you showed him kindness, because you made him feel safe. And do you know what has happened? Shook her head. He is improving, not in strength or speed. He will never be our fastest warrior, but he is improving in other ways. He is becoming more confident. He is learning to work with others. The other cubs are starting to include him instead of pushing him away. Smiled, that is wonderful. It is more than wonderful, it is a lesson. Put down his bowl and looked at with serious eyes. You have shown us that there are different kinds of strength. The strength to fight is important, but the strength to care, the strength to be patient, the strength to include those who are different, these are important too. I am glad I could help, said softly. You have done more than help. You have changed how I see the world. The fire crackled, the wind howled outside, but inside it was warm. There is something I want to ask you, said. What is it? I want you to stay, not as an observer, as a teacher. I want you to teach our trainers your methods. I want you to help our cubs grow in new ways. Was surprised. She had come here expecting to be ignored and rejected. She had expected to fail. Instead, she was being asked to stay and teach. I would be honored, she said. Smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile. "There is one more thing," he said. "The cubs have been asking about you. They make sounds when you are not there. They look for you." "They do?" "Yes, especially. He sits by the door and waits for you every morning." Paused. "In our culture, when cubs choose someone like this, it means something very special." "What does it mean?" "It means they see you as pack, as family." Reached into his robe and pulled out a small object. It was a pendant made of dark stone, carved with the symbol of a wolf. "This is the mark of a pack friend," said. "It has not been given to an outsider in over 1,000 years, but I believe you have earned it." He placed the pendant in his hands. It was warm and smooth. "With this, you are no longer an outsider," said. "You are one of us." Looked at the pendant. Tears formed in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not have words to say how much this means to me." "You do not need words," said. "The cubs have already spoken for you." That night lay in her bed and held the pendant close to her heart. She thought about her grandmother, about her long journey, about all the times she had been told she was too small, too weak, too different. But she had found her place. She had found her pack. And tomorrow, she would continue to teach them the secret she had carried all along. The secret of gentle strength. 1 year had passed since first arrived on Prime. The training facility was different now. The cold silence had been replaced with warmth and laughter. The cubs still trained hard, but there was something new in the air, something lighter. Stood at the edge of the training grounds, watching the morning exercises. The cubs moved in formation, practicing their fighting stances. But between exercises, they would run to their trainers and receive small touches of encouragement. The trainers smiled at them. They knelt down to speak to them. They used soft voices instead of loud commands. This was the new way. Not everyone had accepted it, had left the facility 3 months ago. He said he could not watch the old traditions be destroyed. He went to a distant outpost where things were done the old way. Felt sad about this, but she understood. Change was hard for some people. But most of them had embraced the new methods. The results spoke for themselves. The cubs were stronger than ever, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. They worked together better. They helped each other instead of competing, and they were happier. Was proof of this. The small brown cub was no longer the weakest in the group. He would never be the fastest or the strongest, but he had become something else. He had become a leader. Was the one the other cubs turned to when they were confused or scared. He was patient and kind, just like had taught him. He helped the younger cubs learn their exercises. He encouraged the ones who were struggling. The trainers called him the heart of the pack. Today was a special day. It was the day of naming, when cubs who had completed their training received their warrior names and joined the adult pack. Was among those being honored. Felt her heart swell with pride as she watched him stand in the front row. He was still smaller than the others, but he stood tall and confident. His dark fur shined in the morning sun. Elder walked onto the training grounds. He was older now, his white fur even, but his eyes were bright and strong. Behind him walked the other elders, dressed in ceremonial robes. The cubs and trainers fell silent. Everyone watched as took his place on the raised platform. "Today we honor those who have completed their training," said. His voice echoed across the grounds. "But before we begin, I want to speak about something important." He paused and looked at. 1 year ago, a human came to our world. Many of us did not want her here. Many of us expected her to fail. But she did not fail. She taught us something we had forgotten. Turned back to the crowd. For generations, we believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. We trained our cubs to be warriors. We sent away those who were weak. We thought this was the right way. He shook his head slowly. We were wrong. Strength is important, but it is not the only thing. Kindness is important. Patience is important. The ability to care for others, to include those who are different, to lead with the heart. These are important too. The crowd was completely silent. Every eye was on. The human showed us this truth, and because of her our cubs are stronger than ever before, not just in body but in spirit. Raised his paw toward. Please come forward. Walked through the crowd. The cubs parted to let her pass, touching her legs gently as she went. She climbed onto the platform and stood beside. 1 year ago I gave you the mark of pack friend, said. Today I give you something more. He reached into his robe and pulled out a new pendant. This one was made of pure white stone, carved with the symbol of a mother wolf surrounded by cubs. This is the mark of pack mother, said. It is the highest honor we can give. It means that you are not just a friend to our cubs. You are their guardian, their protector, their family. His eyes filled with tears. She had not expected this. She had never dreamed of something like this. I accept this honor, she said, her voice shaking, and I promise to always care for the cubs of Prime. Place the pendant around her neck. The crowd erupted in howls and cheers. The cubs jumped and barked with joy. Even the strict trainers were smiling. Then the naming ceremony began. One by one, the cubs were called forward, gave each of them their warrior name and their warrior mark. They were no longer cubs. They were adults, ready to serve the pack. When's turn came, the crowd fell especially quiet. Walked forward with steady steps. He stopped in front of and bowed his head. Said, you came to us as the smallest and weakest cub in the training program. Many thought you would fail. Many wanted to send you away. Kept his head bowed, could see his small body shaking slightly. But you did not fail, continued. You worked harder than anyone, you never gave up, and you learned something that many warriors never learn. Placed his paw on his head. You learned that true strength comes from the heart. You learned to lead with kindness. You learned to lift others up instead of pushing them down. His voice grew louder. From this day forward, you shall be known as the Gentle Heart, and you shall serve as the first official heart guardian of the training facility. You will help young cubs who struggle. You will teach them what you have learned. You will show them that there is more than one way to be strong. Lifted his head. His eyes were wet with tears, but his face was full of joy. I accept this honor, he said, and I will make the pack proud. The crowd howled again. Cubs rushed forward to congratulate. The trainers patted him on the back. Even the elders were smiling. Watched from the platform, her heart full of warmth. She thought about how far they had all come. She thought about her grandmother who had taught her to be calm and patient. She thought about all the times she had been told she was too small, too weak, too different. But she had proved them wrong. She had found her place in the universe. After the ceremony, there was a great feast. Everyone ate and danced and celebrated. The cubs played games while the adults told stories. The fire burned bright against the snowy sky. Late in the evening, came to sit beside. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing me. When everyone else looked away, you saw me. Put her arm around him and pulled him close. You were always special. You just needed someone to believe in you. Will you stay forever? He asked. Thought about the question. She thought about Earth, about her village, about all the places she had been. I do not know about forever, she said, but I will stay as long as I am needed, and even when I am not here, I will always carry you in my heart. Pressed against her side. You are my pack mother, he said. You will always be my pack mother. Smiled and looked up at the stars. They were bright and beautiful, scattered across the dark sky like diamonds. She had come to Prime as an outsider. She had been rejected and ignored, but she had not given up. She had stayed true to herself, and in the end she had changed everything. Not with force, not with weapons, not with power. With patience, with kindness, with love. The softest heart had held the greatest power. And that was a truth that would never forget.